we are ready for our next panel, and it's one of the awesome topics that a lot of the audience people can actually mention this is what they want to see. So I'm excited to effectively fulfill this, which is we're going to talk about open source intelligence and kind of how do we actually not only just intelligently, but also thoughtfully merge crypto and AI. And speaking of the people who are going to be talking about these topics, I want to bring on Doug from Livepeer, Illia from NEAR, Niraj from Ritual, and moderating this will be Joyce from Global Coin Research. So please welcome all four of them on stage.
So let's start off by with some introductions. My name's Joyce Yang. I am the founder of Global Coin Research. We are a research and investment DAO. And next to me is Illia.
Hi everyone, I'm a co-founder of NEAR, but in my previous life, I was a machine learning researcher, worked at Google Research on natural language understanding, and I'm a co-author of a technology called Transformers, which is a T in GPT, and pretty much the technology that's powering a lot of the modern innovation in AI.
Hey guys, my name is Niraj, and I'm a co-founder at a company called Ritual. And our goal is to make it very easy for smart contract developers to integrate AI models into their products. Before Ritual, I was an investor at Polychain for 6 years and invested in a bunch of different stuff in a bunch of different categories. And crypto AI was starting to take up all of my time while I was working. And so I just decided to leave and go start something in the space.
All right, my name is Doug Petkanics. I'm the co-founder of a project called Livepeer, which is a decentralized open video infrastructure for the world. We power video streaming across hundreds of applications. We ingest 3 million minutes of video per week, and we have a large network of GPUs that do video encoding, which is recently being put to use to support generative AI video. So we'll talk a little bit about that in the context of AI today.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So let's start off with Illia. You kind of came from the AI space and gradually went into the crypto space. And now I'm particularly curious about why do you think there needs to be a crypto layer in AI?
Yeah, I mean, so for background, when we started NEAR, it was actually an AI company. And back then, we were trying to teach machines to code, which in 2017 sounded like a science fiction. And right now sounds like, yeah, I mean, it works right now. And so we did not have, infinite money from Microsoft to, build infinitely large clusters. And so we were trying to be smarter and get better training data. And we actually had a lot of students around the world who were contributing data, and we wanted to pay them. And actually paying people around the world is hard, even now, and unless you use blockchain, global payment system. Now, 2018, even back then, transaction fees on Bitcoin and Ethereum were already higher than what we paid people. And so that's kind of how we started the journey with NEAR protocol. Now, kind of turning around now, there are I split it into 3 sections. There is a data section, infra section, application section for kind of Web3 AI space. Specifically for data section, there's a lot of important pieces because whatever you feed these models is what you get in result. And right now, most of these models are actually trained on proprietary data that somebody in some company decides what goes in. And this biases the model in very, particular ways. It also means that if somebody is adversarially injecting, for example, data to influence everybody's opinion later, we will even not know if the engineers in that company will not notice that. For example, right now, somebody can be running, bots on Reddit to post a bunch of stuff that, a year later, your ChatGPT will be actually outputting and biasing, who you should vote for or what kind of, things to pick. So data curation, crowdsourcing, orchestration of kind of data sets is extremely important. There's also a very important piece around open source. What we see right now, more and more of kind of Reddits and New York Times, etc., are saying that you cannot use their data for training. And it's extremely kind of important to preserve that. Some of the websites that are hosting open source data sets are being sent legal take down notices. So we have an opportunity here in blockchain to actually host that data, again, orchestrate it, crowdsource it in such a way that is, preventing that. So that's a big stack. On infra, I'll let Niraj to talk about it as they're working on that, but obviously there's a lot of pieces on infra that are relevant. Otherwise, I'll take it for a whole hour.
So yes, I think those are great, great kind of ideals, and I think taking the backdrop or the sort of meta of where AI is today, I like the crypto AI area as a nice alternative to what exists out there today, which is distribution is controlled by a few players, and compute's controlled by a few players, and the model development is controlled by a few players. And I think we've seen as centralized companies with kind of differing profit incentives and social incentives will start to do bad things. And I think we've already seen in a couple of cases over the past several months in various different products. And so what we're building and what we're really excited about is building, execution, trustless execution around AI, and allowing you to build these new crypto-enabled AI applications or AI-enabled crypto applications, whichever way you want to take it. And so there's a lot of really exciting pieces to be building in this space, whether it's computational integrity, privacy, building around model governance, model development, model training. And so more we can certainly dive into and talk about, but I think that's kind of a high level on the types of things that we're excited about.
That's really helpful and a really good context for the audience. Maybe Doug, if you could tell us a little bit more about Livepeer has been around for a long time, right? And you guys started out using GPUs for video transcoding. How has that evolved?
Yeah, that's right. Livepeer has been around for 7 years. The network's been live for 6 years. We have this global network of node operators running thousands of GPUs to transcode video or convert it from, the HD formats where they're captured into whatever format and bitrate you need to consume on your device. And it's really, a practical infrastructure plumbing component of video streaming, which is super popular. But like every industry, AI is changing the game and having a tremendous impact. And that certainly extends to the world of video with one of the heaviest and most popular forms of media that we all consume. That ranges from, how video gets processed or delivered in terms of these optimized transcoding and upscaling jobs and whatnot, which the GPUs perform, but also to how video is created. And I think many of you in this room probably saw this really exciting and interesting moment that occurred, a week and a half ago when OpenAI released a preview of their generative video model called Sora. And you saw how all of a sudden people can type prompts and generate 30 to 60 second beautiful video clips. And it's really amazing. It's really inspiring. But like Niraj was alluding to, that's a closed proprietary model, which is, created by OpenAI, and access is restricted or biased. And then the amount of compute required to generate that 60-second video might take, 30 minutes of GPU compute, which is very expensive. And it's run on, the GPUs that NVIDIA makes that only Microsoft has access to buy. And we know from looking at LLMs, from looking at diffusion models, how quickly open versions of these models are going to catch up and are going to become available. But you also need open infrastructure to, run that heavy compute and that heavy inference to produce these AI video models. And you need a surrounding video stack for video ingestion, storage, serving, analytics, optimization, encoding, et cetera. So that's how we think about why it makes sense to put additional tasks beyond just transcoding onto the Livepeer network, is that you need this full video stack to keep up with the way the video is changing.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think we addressed and touched on kind of multiple layers of the stack. So let's talk about where you're thinking about how crypto and the AI stack within our kind of decentralized space is comparing to what we're seeing in Web 2 and kind of the closed-ended models and software that's available. So meaning, what kind of resources do we need to have in a decentralized world to catch up to the centralized entities and centralized competitors? There's probably a lot, and maybe you could talk about a few that you think really...
Yeah, I think there's like a whole kind of, at every level of the stack, there's something that we need to improve on. I think maybe to just touch on one moment is, when we say crypto and AI, right, I think like people kind of jump a lot to conclusion of like, okay, there's a cryptocurrency involved. That doesn't always need to be the case. The decentralization can come in the form of running these models on your device, on, for a specific use case. And a lot of it is powered by the open source and kind of AI development that's happening. Now, open source AI development has pretty kind of broken incentives, because you either working for a big company and you open source it because it's your compliments. So like Facebook, open source Llama, amazing work, but they're doing it because it's not their core business and they're using it to attract a lot more people to work with them. Or you're trying to push actually the envelope, but then you have no resources. You need to incorporate a company, raise money, and then you're spending a ton of time figuring out a business model when you're just giving up all your models for free, right? And so one of the kind of aspects that I think is important here is creating the incentive structure that can actually facilitate development of open source software and still have kind of value capture that is kind of open and transparent to everyone and like fair, and allows to fund continuous development. And I think, again, across every pieces of stack, we see that as the main tool and principle. And I think that's like a really important property that we're using here. And so it doesn't need to be like, okay, well, we're going to be running models on blockchain, which is like some people are asking. It's more about like, how do we use these primitives to really benefit open source AI development, as well as to provide proofs, to provide kind of better tooling, faster, more effective, as well as not manipulable, not accessible by, other parties.
Yeah, I think there's like a good example here, which is I mentioned like the GPU shortage and just like the restricted access to the compute you need to build AI platforms. You have to go to one of the big clouds. But there's so much more compute that exists in the world, in gaming laptops, in GPU mining rigs, that can be coordinated and put to use to create sort of open access AI compute infrastructure, to run open models. And if you look at like two of the superpowers of blockchain technology, two things it's really, really good at. One is like massive instant global coordination through incentives. So if you use crypto economic incentives, you can solve the chicken and the egg problem. You can bootstrap the supply side of these compute networks very quickly on a global scale. And that's one of the superpowers and advantages that DePIN networks have. And the second is just like near instant settlement of global permissionless payments, which is necessary in order to create these marketplaces where anyone can access open AI infrastructure, pay, infrastructure providers or model creators that are running them and contributing to them, permissionlessly without needing to be on the same currency or the same payment rails or be approved by some gatekeeper. And I think like those two primitives are what, crypto plus AI coming together will enable.
Yeah, I would just echo what Doug and Illia said just now. There are things that, when thinking about building, how to build these applications in crypto AI, like what are the best things to build? And I think we should really lean into the strengths of crypto. Crypto, because it's this tool for self-sovereignty, it now allows you to, in effect, kind of own your identity, own your data. And we've built some, the crypto community as a whole has built some really amazing things off of this. We have a permissionless payments mechanism. We have a permissionless application protocol. And leaning into those things and figuring out, what are the most enticing, interesting things to build in the space, and whether it's doing, sort of autonomously updated DeFi or recommendation systems or generative art. There's a lot of exciting stuff to build that I think will draw, the curious open source AI folks into the space even further.
So we have a lot of builders here, and I want to address some of the questions kind of coming from the builders who are also building in the intersection of AI and crypto. I think the number one often come up question may be talent, right? How do I find researchers? How do I get AI talent to join my company, either whether it's from a large conglomerate from Web2 or someone within crypto? How have you guys been hiring in that respect, and what advice would you give to the builders?
The way that we've been thinking about hiring, we're building at the intersection of these two spaces. So we obviously have a ton of crypto people. Hiring AI people has not been an easy thing. And also hiring people at the intersection has not been easy as well. I think part of it is because there's kind of a general lack of ML education amongst crypto people, whether you're a developer or not. And I think a lot of people also ask about, what are the most interesting use cases? But I think once you do the prerequisite ML 101 education, you start to see how these things can kind of intersect in interesting ways. If crypto is sort of like a verifiable computer, you can think of it as AI is sort of like a statistical computer. It's able to take these like vast swaths of data, and you're generating this like compressed intelligence that's highly effective. And so I think in thinking through these different angles, I think it's really finding what the most interesting pieces, of what you're building is to an AI person. Some people might be really attracted by the open source ethos and how crypto can help accelerate that. Some people may be attracted by the ability to build a whole new swath of applications. Some people might just be really interested in the technical problems. Privacy is really difficult, and people are working on it. Integrity is difficult. Governance. There's a lot to do for AI people, whether they're developers, researchers, policy people. So that's generally how we've thought about hiring, but it's still early, and I think as this space grows, I think that'll only help the cause in bringing more AI people into the space and getting more crypto people to kind of learn AI and kind of build at that intersection.
Can you just share a bit about how many people are in your company so that we kind of have context from each of you also?
Sure.
Yeah.
12 people for us.
Thank you. Doug or Illia?
Yeah, we're approaching like 30 people within the core team, and maybe another 20 that sort of orbit around and contractor contributor landscape. And out to the AI point, I would echo that like a mission orientation around open AI or decentralized AI resonates a lot stronger than like figuring out what crypto plus AI means, which can be a little scary or people will approach with skepticism. But there's so many AI researchers and developers that don't want to see, OpenAI plus Microsoft or Gemini be, the only AI platform of the future, and really want open alternatives. And that's attractive to people. And you show them and build, earn their trust about how crypto can help enable that, rather than need them to take like a big leap of faith.
Yeah, I mean, for NEAR itself, right, is more of a platform that you can build applications like this, you can build incentive systems. And so for us, it's more working with great founders in the ecosystem, and as well as going out and working with AI founders and seeing how we can actually bridge the gap. So like I've angel invested in some of the AI companies as well, who, for example, building a new economy, UGC economy. Then I'm like, well, there's an opportunity there to actually integrate some of the crypto primitives to actually bridge the gap. And so I think a lot of it is kind of educating about open source and finding places where individuals, builders, founders actually resonate with the ethos of blockchain without actually like driving into the kind of crypto specifics, but more like, hey, how can we solve this problem, right? lots of people creating new generative assets. How do we create a marketplace for them? Well, actually, we have tooling to do that. That's way more effective than you building like a huge system around it. We have, open source projects that are not getting funded. Well, we can have a system around that. So like, how do we create this kind of systems and leverage blockchain for that, and then working with its founders?
Yeah, you mentioned like creating new generative assets. It's interesting. We've talked a lot about like building the stack or building the infrastructure. We haven't talked a lot about like the users or consumers of generative AI. And in that world, I'm interested in it going the other direction, where you actually have crypto-oriented creator economy builders, people building NFT projects, like decentralized social projects, thinking about what can I do in terms of creating media using generative AI. So if you can, create a 10,000 NFT set using generative AI, you can look at generative video and say, how does this help me create interesting like music videos that can be owned on chain and sold and distributed? I think there's, we're at ETHGlobal event, there's going to be a big hackathon this weekend. I think this like intersection of crypto plus media plus generative AI is an area where you're going to see like just an explosion of new awesome things being hacked and created. And these stacks should be key to enabling.
Not to mention that is true for so many different modalities: text, video, audio. And so I think these creative tools can both help kind of assist existing creatives, but it also increases the TAM of like who can be a creative. Like you might be creative, but not a creative. But that's still kind of a beautiful thing that you're able to do now with this generative AI tooling that's out there.
Yeah, I would say like a specific example, somebody like one of the founders, I'm an angel investor in, they built a AI game engine, which allows anybody to build a game by just explaining how it should work. There's actually like really cool, like they have cool kind of people who built it, and their comments are like, hey, I cannot code, right? I'm a designer, or I'm like a storyteller, and I'm being able to now build this like interactive experience, which, can be a game, can be more of a storytelling through interaction. And then when something doesn't work, they just like fix it. It literally type that in, and it's actually tries to iterate and address that issue. So there's like a huge opportunity in like where we have AI startups now, which are creating something new, which exactly enables new modality that you would not be able to be that kind of creator before without like a ton of specialized training and experience. And now, similar with Sora, like you can, be a Hollywood director by typing in, a few lines of text. So the opportunity is huge. Now, there will be a flood of these things happening. There needs to be a market on the other side to actually balance it out. There needs to be some form of like authenticity and scarcity and reputation attached to it to actually build kind of and like maintain that system. And that's again where blockchain is technology to power that.
Yeah, I haven't seen any projects that's really pushing, crypto to the mainstream narrative, right? You leveraging AI, for example, that's actually, explaining and breaking down blockchain in simple formats, or helping bridge 80-year-old person to get crypto instantly by leveraging AI. Have you come across any of that? Because I feel like we've been seeing a lot of projects building, on the infrastructure, middleware layer. But like, what about the top layer where you could really push crypto to the mainstream?
We have like a couple projects that are allowing to interact with blockchain through natural language prompts. So literally in ChatGPT, there is a GPT from Minbase, which allows you to mint NFTs and kind of interact with some of this from GPT like literally chat. And you don't need to know about like accounts, transactions, etc. And so I think that interface is going to be interesting. And then another project kind of working from a different direction, which is you just describe the user interface you want, and it generates that. And then it can hook into smart contracts and other things on the other side. So you can kind of generate yourself an interface for interacting with applications. Now, that's again a new type of creator that we'll see that like are not developers who are now building kind of custom ways to interact with some of the maybe financial primitives or creator primitives that are and marketplaces that exist on chain, but that's kind of pushing that to this end user level, right? Where I'm as a user now don't need to like understand APIs, RPC calls and kind of transaction formation, RLP encoding, but actually just like, hey, create me like a marketplace of videos and, be able to upload new one and then, be able to sell and price it with, first price auction, boom, generated, and, potentially still relying on existing smart contract, but maybe even helping develop that smart contract as well. So I think there's like few different pieces coming from different direction.
Yeah, I don't think the moment occurs when the mainstream 80-year-old knows that they're using crypto plus AI. Like I think the moment occurs when there's crypto-enabled AI where the crypto is hidden or transparent. So, in Livepeer in the video world, it's like, oh yeah, the other day there was like hundreds of thousands of people watching like Fred again, stream his concert through the Lot Radio website, which is like powered by a crypto-enabled network, Livepeer under the hood. But like none of the viewers know that they're using crypto, right? It's like crypto was used to coordinate and incentivize the infrastructure that powers this thing. And so in AI, creator economy, social network apps, you're gonna see and get the benefits of what AI enables for the mainstream, because crypto coordination and incentives enabled an open version of the software to exist for developers to build, as opposed to it having to be a Google project.
There's a chain abstraction summit going on this specific topic, which trying to remove the barriers for entry and abstract the blockchains for the users.
But we're
not a plug at all.
But we're also here now listening to these great panelists here at Pragma. So thanks for being mobile here, guys. I think I have two questions, but we may run out of time, right? I think there's just so many questions. Feel free to find these guys and like pull them aside and ask them as many questions as you want while they're here. But I think one question I always have, is how do we make decentralized AI? I think following up to what Doug said, maybe decentralized AI will just be in the underlying layer and no one actually will ever know you're using it. So people may not even care about it. But then how do we actually make someone, a consumer, decide, hey, I want to use this decentralized AI option instead of this centralized AI option?
So I think there's a couple different angles. I would go back to the kind of like the values that you're going for with crypto AI. So one might be, let's just take a couple of random examples. One might be a user that is using a big box LLM that doesn't like the results that are coming out and want to go use another open source alternative, or doesn't even have to be open source. They will move to ideally something crypto enabled. Maybe there are incentives in place to help keep improving that model. And I think we're starting to see this already. Again, given that these companies are kind of steering the models themselves, I think there's going to be a lot more need for more of a kind of user-driven approach and how, what kind of models they run and what types of applications that they're using. I also think there's a bunch of unique kind of Web3 enabled crypto AI use cases. I think things around, like imagine if there was a Lil Miquela type artist, fully, for those that aren't familiar, Lil Miquela was is a 100,000 plus follower account on Instagram. It's a fully virtual character, but it like sells a ton of merch and has a bunch of, watchers. And I think people being able to create those types of things, and it's just uniquely kind of innately enabled by crypto, where there's maybe some sort of crypto token associated with that character, or you can buy NFTs. I think leaning into the consumer Web3 elements, I'd love to see more companies building in this space, I think is another interesting way to kind of think about all of this.
Yeah, I would say fundamentally it needs to be driven by either new products, new kind of economic value, new entertainment value, right?
Anything new?
Yeah, but like at the end, it cannot be just based on kind of oh, this is decentralized or this is open source. People mostly don't care. But the fact that it's open source means you can build on it way easier. The fact that it's decentralized means you can plug it in into financial system really easy. So you have like this new benefits that as developers, you can now build some new experiences that you couldn't on top of, for example, ChatGPT. And also, even if you could, ChatGPT tomorrow can just close their API, jack up the prices, neuter the model even more, so it doesn't actually work as well as it was yesterday, and you will not be able to have any control over that. And so, you have these benefits for developers, and so now kind of the models need to catch up on the quality. At the same time, you can have specific, customized models, and again, have a model marketplace, for example, to leverage on that. So there's opportunity and kind of some of the, future protection that you get from leveraging open source and decentralization. And then that will lead to application that people want to use because they're, enable something new for them.
Another question I had was, we're in a growing, I guess, burgeoning or currently already a bull market, right? Bitcoin just hit 60K today. How do you guys think about the price of crypto when it comes to adoption of your kind of the intersection of kind of decentralized models and how that could be pushing that forward into the attention of currently centralized players, right? What I mean by that is, when Bitcoin went up to 50K or when the ETF passed, it brought public attention, right? And that's where you started getting acknowledgement from banks. You started getting more direct recognition and approval from regulatory, maybe around the world. Do you see that happening for AI and that kind of not specifically about the pricing action, but the fact that if the crypto industry does well, it could potentially push the projects within the AI projects within crypto further?
So what I think the nice thing with prices going up does is it removes a lot of the skepticism that the mainstream media and regular people have about crypto. When crypto prices are low, I think even crypto people, they start to maybe lose sight of the fundamentals, and they get a little bit too in their own heads about, oh, does this have any value? What's going on here? And then at the kind of opposite end of the spectrum, when prices are up, sort of anything is possible. And I think, that kind of helps in bringing in new people. And, ultimately you kind of need that cycle to bring new users into the space. I remember in 2021, the NFT PFPs was that was the way that regular people were starting to use crypto. They were going onto MoonPay and paying with a credit card, and a bunch of celebrities were starting to have their NFT PFPs. So I think what it does is it helps enable more attention in the space and ultimately can help drive more attention towards crypto AI because people are more sympathetic, open to trying an alternative, and more open to those kind of new values. Whereas I think at a low market price, everyone's OpenAI is the only thing that's going to work and nothing else is going to work. So that's just my general view on it.
I would say having built through 3 cycles at Livepeer, we've seen almost zero correlation between crypto prices and actual demand side usage or demand for the network, right? People are building video apps regardless of whether crypto prices are high or not high, and the product that they're using is either good or not good to meet their needs. It has nothing to do with price. But to echo Niraj, you do see easier access to capital to enable you to build and fulfill your vision, and much more interested and open-minded, talented product people, engineers, business people, congregating around the space to learn about it and consider building there. There's a lot of noise that comes with that signal, but a lot of that, signal does stick around and do the real building. And so that's where the benefit is.
Another awkward or question that may not have been brought up as often is regulatory capture. And I think I'm curious whether you guys have been approached about and thinking about regulatory capture, coming from the large tech conglomerates and how that's affecting, or what they're doing, lobbying DC, affecting decentralized models and decentralized AI. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, I think that is one of the kind of both big risks for AI space right now, that there is a lot of really strange kind of executive orders, data laws that are coming out that are like trying to address what people perceive as an issue with AI, which really not. And at the same time kind of creates an opportunity for big companies to have kind of a more solidified position that others cannot displace. And I think there's few fundamental things that are happening. One is this kind of like attachment between the capabilities of models and, number of parameters, which is really kind of, somewhat arbitrary based on maybe 2 years worth of research of hey, it looks like models are improving if we put more parameters. That's not really proven that that's a real thing. And then on the other side, kind of the requirement to have all kinds of departments that gonna be oversee the model, deployment, etc., which is again, if you're a startup, you cannot do that. If you're individual, you cannot do that. So those are really kind of big issues. There's also, I would say, one fundamental thing, which is the copyright laws existed in a pre-generative world. They existed to when the transition happened from kind of telling the stories to, printing books and distribution to actually reward the original author. This was, pre-crypto way of rewarding people. And so now we have generative models, which I can go and generate every single potential tune of a song and copyright it. And then everybody will be every new song will be violating something I just generated, right? It'll be every possible thing that sounds plausible to human, you just generate it in 10 hours with a lot of A100s. And so the reality is now the copyrights is kind of needs to change. It needs to be adapted to generative AI. And so those are all the pieces that right now kind of creating a pretty big mess in the AI space. And so open source is one way to contract it. Web3 and some form of anonymity is actually the other one. And so I think these pieces need to come together. They need to show that you can have kind of a model that, for example, if we have a model that is fully, decentralized, running from different hardware, you cannot enforce any of these laws on it. You cannot require it to, follow something. And so I think those examples will also help to frame better some of this regulatory and actually reshape it to address the real problem. The real problem, our society is not ready for generative AI. Our society systems, operating system, the content, how we interact with government, none of this is ready. And again, cryptography is the tool to use to fix a lot of this stuff. So I would say the regulatory right now tries to pretty much address very surface form problems. They're not trying to address the actual problems. And I think we have an opportunity here to showcase that you can actually do things differently, and at the same time showcase that you cannot enforce these things. And to draw a parallel, when there was, in the beginning of the 90s, there was a potential that cryptography will be considered a dual-use technology, meaning it's considered military grade and you cannot export it. And so there was a person who walked across, printed out the algorithm on this t-shirt, walked across the border to Canada to be arrested for violating that. And then they went to court to pretty much prove that this is freedom of speech. The algorithm is freedom of speech. It cannot be considered a military technology, military expert. And so we kind of need something like that right now in AI, where to show that decentralized, you can actually decentralize AI and run it, and you cannot enforce any of the rules that are right now being considered, and actually go to court with that and prove that we need to actually have different rules that are way more sane and addressing real problems.
Yeah, for those who aren't aware, here in the United States, there's already an executive order that's been signed by the president, is already in effect, and there's a series of milestones each month that determine how anyone working on AI must, comply with regulators. And it's very, arbitrary. If you're training a model over a certain size, you have to, comply with and report to the Secretary of Commerce or Agriculture or something. There's, different departments that you have to comply with to prove that you've tested your models sufficiently, but it's not defined what it means to test those models. So who can comply with these and hire the lawyers to document everything they do and make the case to defend if there's an action later? Only the big tech companies, not a startup that's trying to innovate really quickly and be disruptive to those tech companies. And by the way, those big tech companies are the ones who gave the input and lobbied the politicians for the creation of these actions. So as Illia, alluded to, decentralized and open AI is actually, an alternative that can guarantee access to the rest of us to accelerate the same way that you see big tech accelerating towards this.
Yeah, an example would be if I have a flash drive right now with a Mistral model like Llama 60B, and I give it to you, this potentially can be a violation of, that executive order.
It's a munition. They declared it a munition. Yeah.
That sounds super scary. And so how do you guys think about or advising projects building AI now and where they should be jurisdictioned and building in their teams?
Launch a DAO.
Launch a DApp, is that what you said?
A DAO.
A DAO, oh, I see.
I mean, I think there's few different parameters. One is if you're building on top of some of these foundational models, right? If you're using things like Ritual, it's actually less of a challenge because you're kind of using that as infrastructure. It's pretty easily swappable unless you started to go in. Now, if you're building foundational models, that's where things is becoming super complicated. There's also data center KYC requirements, which is if you're running in a data center, you need to KYC and data center needs to report you. So there's all kinds of strange things that literally rolling out right now after April in US. And so there you may need to consider, having domicile in some other countries. I would just mention Switzerland as it's been a very positive for crypto. It's also it's outside of EU, even though it's kind of in the middle of it. And so it so far has not introduced any of this challenging rules. And so it's a good opportunity to capture both good crypto and AI jurisdiction for your setup.
That's helpful. And last question. What advice would you have for builders now building in the intersection of kind of AI and crypto? I think my question primarily also is regarding, where is the stack are we really lagging the most that we can really be making up for with direct involvement, and where is the opportunity, right?
So I'd say the first thing is the ML 101 is important. So go do that. And then the next thing I would do is I would go and just, again, start thinking about, again, what did ChatGPT, Stable Diffusion, what did those things bring us that were really valuable as consumers? And clearly it's really, really valuable. If hundreds of millions of users in the matter of a few years. And thinking about what contours of that can kind of align with the contours of crypto and crypto product building. And so there's a lot of interesting areas. And I think a lot of the people in this room have maybe a subject matter area that they're sort of an expert in. Maybe it's DeFi, maybe it's NFTs. And thinking through, again, what are these properties that are kind of uniquely enabled at this intersection that they can build applications on top of. And I'd love to see more consumer apps. I mean, I think, to me, one of the biggest opportunities of this space is that I think it can be one of the greatest drivers of new users into crypto because the barrier to entry is so low. I don't think my mom is ever going to use DeFi, but she very well, and Nordic she already does, use ChatGPT and diffusion models and things like that. So again, if you can find the unique value of crypto, whether it's incentives, it's the privacy and computational integrity, whatever, or it's the open access, new way of distribution, there's a lot of really interesting tools to play around with. And I think I would just tell people to experiment and kind of see what comes out.
Yeah, hack, experiment, innovate, find that, CryptoKitties moment that just onboards, 100,000, a million people into this space and inspires a whole new wave of applications, because I don't think we have enough product visionaries thinking at that layer right now, but now's a really good time to do it.
Yeah, I would mention specifically on the data layer, there's so much opportunity right now between like actually just making sure open source data sets don't get taken out and like leveraging, decentralized storage, blockchains for registries, crowdsourcing, data curation, kind of getting and incentivizing people, bringing data that, data marketplaces. And then from there, going to like content marketplaces and those types of things as well, which I think we see a lot more people wanting to be creative with ChatGPT and being able to. And so like, how do we actually bring that economy? Because I don't think OpenAI will be that interested in that. And so I think those are kind of, interesting aspects to start experimenting with.
This has been super helpful. Let's give a round of applause for our panelists again. Thank you so much for your time, everyone. Really great panel. Thank you.